some people are, at least other countries in Europe, are starting to be not so shot in the pants anymore about continuing the fight. Do you think that might be the means that gets us out of this mess?
It might be. What has happened, the media is so coordinated, and I'm talking about every broadcast station, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, when they decide jointly as a group that they're going to promote a narrative, whether it's COVID, whether it's January 6th, turning the demonstrations into an insurrection, an unarmed insurrection where one person is killed, and that's a person who's killed by Nancy Pelosi's Capitol cops. That becomes a bigger thing than 9/11. I mean, they're able to distort people's thinking. It's very hard for people. They switch from channel to channel. Everybody says exactly the same. You take Zelensky. Zelensky, you can go on the internet and you can easily find videos where he's grossly immoral things, where he's with some group of homosexual guys wearing black leather, and he's prancing around in ladies' high heel shoes. You can find those. You can find information. He's very pro-abortion. He made this grotesquely immoral presentation in public where he's behind a piano and he's pulling his pants down to his ankles and he's doing immoral things.
Well, but even beyond Zelensky, I mean, even under the Obama administration, Ukraine was considered the most corrupt nation in the world.
Yeah,
I mean, that didn't change in the course of a few years. It's an incredibly corrupt country, run by oligarchs and mafioso types. And if we are so vain as to think that those aren't the people benefiting from this, we're out of our mind. And the poor people in the street are suffering without a doubt. And they're going to suffer more the longer this goes on. That there has to be a solution to this. Let's hope that the European countries at least show some leadership in recognizing that and doing something about it, because DC, 30 miles to our east, is intent on banging the war drums as long as they can and dumping as much money as they can and causing more problems here because of the fact that we don't have that anymore to print.
Sure. Well, now, Germany, France, and Italy are all having very serious misgivings. First of all, I think they're coming to grips with the fact that Ukraine is losing the war, despite all of the propaganda. The Russians had some difficulties initially because they thought it was going to be a much easier exercise than it was, but now that the Russians have gotten to be dead serious about this, there simply is no way that the Ukrainians are going to win the war. And Germans, French, Italians are saying, okay, Ukraine is going to lose the war, and we are shoveling our money into Ukraine, and probably the weapons we send are going to end up being used by the Russian armed forces.
Yep.
Or sold by Ukrainian oligarchs to ISIS and Al Qaeda and all these people, and they're starting to have some second thoughts. And just one interesting thing. Now, this is from says a senior Czech official, and this is what the Wall Street Journal is saying. And the senior Czech official says every phone call, ministers from the north of Europe and Central Europe are getting more and more angry. And what he's saying is they're getting angry at what are we doing in Ukraine? We're risking a thermonuclear war, which, by the way, Americans should realize that nuclear war comes to our shores. Yeah. It kills probably a third of all Americans, maybe over time kills many more than that. Now, the good news for all of you who are really worried is that you don't have to worry about Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi. You don't have to worry about Bill Gates or about George Soros. They've got their underground bunkers that are stocked, ready to go. They will not suffer. So if that's the reason you're worried about nuclear war, no problems. Those people have nothing to worry about. It's only your family, your children, your grandchildren, your wife, your mother. Those are the people who are going to be blasted apart or die of radiation poisoning. So no problem. Don't worry about it.
It'd be fun to see the inventory list of how many cases of vodka Nancy Pelosi needs to make it through nuclear winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
clearly, her husband won't be driving in that case. So maybe that'll be a benefit to him. Well, but something that's not good, absolutely, we can call out is that the various sanctions going on right now are potentially going to cause a famine. And we're seeing it in that Russia is a massive exporter of food and fertilizer and other things, and that's being sanctioned. And what it's doing is it's hurting things back here. And to make it even worse, in winter wheat country where I grew up in north central Montana and the Dakotas and even all the way down through Kansas, they're having all sorts of problems. That weather has already impacted their ability to plant. And I can tell you, winter wheat is the primary wheat used in the production of bread. So if you want to hit hard on the basic building block of society, at least for those that can still eat gluten, it's bread. And so that's what's getting hit right now. And we're doing it to ourselves because we've decided Russia. I think we're going to overturn Russia to justify all the rhetoric of the last 4 or 5 years. It's nuts. What do you think can be done to turn this around, sir?
People need to begin to understand that sanctions are a double-edged sword, and you may cut the other person, but you cut yourself, and you may end up bleeding to death from these things. So yeah, in North Dakota, the farmers can't plant because the rain's too heavy. But then in Kansas, which is the biggest wheat producer, they had a really poor crop because they had a drought. So too much rain in one place, too little rain in the other. And the U.S. is the 4th largest exporter of grain. I think most people are aware that we're a big grain exporter. But what's the number 1 exporter? Russia. What's the number 2? Ukraine. So by promoting this war, and Russia made the attack. The U.S. set this thing up and refused to talk peace with Russia, and just had their backs to the wall, forced them to make the attack. And we thought, oh, this is cool. We'll knock off some more countries. We'll sell some more weapons and move farther east. And but I see very little evidence that the key politicians who run this country and the EU and places like that, I don't think they give a rip about ordinary people. I doubt if many of them even have ever talked to a truck driver or somebody who runs heavy equipment on a job site, or just ordinary real people that the people who come into their house, the servants that they have to do all the things. They're so insulated from reality that they don't care whether people out there somewhere in the world are starving to death or not. But we keep blaming Russia. We say, well, because of Russia, we don't have enough grain. We don't have enough fertilizer, wheat, lumber, coal, oil, aluminum, all these things. Russia didn't sanction any of those things. Russia was happy to export those things to us. We did it. We imposed the sanctions, and we're the ones who cut off our access to those things.
And the ruble's doing just fine, by the way. So it's not hurting them. It's not hurting them.
The ruble is the strongest currency in the world today.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, they've got very sound economic policies in Russia, very conservative. And it's just it is an insane situation we're in, where we're you've got President Biden. Hundreds of times he has said he's talking about gasoline prices. This is the Putin gasoline hike. No, it isn't. Putin did not sanction oil. He did not have anything to do with cutting down on the production of gasoline here or anywhere else. If tomorrow we said, President Putin, ship us 300 super tankers full of oil, I'll tell you what, they'd be loading up in Russian ports tomorrow and they'd be coming our way. No, we did it. We sanctioned the American people, and we have jacked up gasoline prices so that families now are having trouble making their budgets meet.
Well, just yesterday, Janet Yellen, Treasury, said, "Oh, she was wrong about the inflation trends." Like, duh. I mean, like, we didn't see this coming. And yet it's beginning to look more and more like it's purposeful, like we're trying to crash things. And in the case of Russia, I mean, what's the stated end state? What does success look like? Is it the overthrow of the Russian government? Is that what it's going to take before we stop dumping billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine? What is it? I mean, this is nutso land, and it's just destroying us. And add to that the weather woes we have in this country. And yeah, I mean, the only good news in all of this is if you bought some, wheat futures a few months ago, because everything else is going to
lot of money.
Is going to be deflated. All the investments. We talked to our investment advisor yesterday. It's like, what's the strategy? It's like everything is just to mitigate loss. There's going to be loss. Yeah. And that's the problem. I mean, everyone in America is suffering because of a couple politicians in Washington that got it for Putin. And they could have settled this. They could have had a reasonable settlement months ago already. And there's no statement at all of this is what we're going to do to settle. This is what will solve this problem. We're going to be in this a long time, certainly as long as Biden is half demented in the White House. But it's crazy.